There is a quiet moment that arrives later in life when you realize something has changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just subtly enough to feel it in your chest. You speak and fewer people lean in. You walk into a room and the energy no longer shifts around you. You notice that you are not being challenged as much, not consulted as often, not watched the way you once were. Being ignored after 50 does not announce itself, it simply settles in. And for many people, it hurts more than they expected. At first, the mind searches for explanations. Maybe people are busy. Maybe the world has become faster. Maybe you are imagining it. But deep down, you know this is different. You have crossed an invisible line where attention is no longer automatic, where relevance is no longer assumed, where you are no longer chased for your presence. And that realization can quietly shake even the strongest sense of self. For years, much of your power came from being needed, from being sought after, from being included, from being seen. Respect often arrived through noise, through activity, through performance, through proving. But when those signals fade, the absence feels personal. It can feel like erasure, like becoming invisible while still being fully alive. What makes this especially painful is that it often happens at the exact moment when you have the most wisdom to offer, the most perspective, the most emotional restraint, the most clarity about what matters and what does not. Yet the world seems less interested, less curious, less patient, and the mind asks a dangerous question. If I am no longer noticed, do I still matter? This is where many people make a mistake. They chase attention again. They talk louder. They explain more. They try to stay relevant by force. They offer advice no one asked for. They compete with younger energy. They try to prove they still belong. And each attempt quietly drains dignity, because real power has never been about being noticed. It was about being solid even when you are not. Being ignored after 50 teaches you something that no book ever could. It reveals where your identity was resting. If being unseen feels unbearable, it is often because attention became a mirror for worth. And when the mirror is taken away, the self feels shaky. But this discomfort is not a punishment, it is an invitation. Earlier in life, attention feeds the ego. Later in life, the absence of attention feeds truth. You begin to see how much energy was spent maintaining an image, how many conversations were navigated to stay relevant, how many opinions were softened or sharpened just to be accepted, how often you performed a version of yourself to stay included. When the spotlight fades, the performance can finally stop. And this is where real power quietly begins. Power after 50 is not loud. It does not chase validation. It does not need to announce itself. It is rooted, calm, observant. It listens more than it speaks, and when it does speak, the words land because they are not desperate, they are not rushed, they are not seeking approval. Being ignored teaches you patience, not passive patience, but the kind that comes from knowing you do not need to interrupt silence to exist. You begin to notice how many people talk just to avoid being forgotten, how many fill space because they are afraid of being overlooked. And slowly you stop doing that. Silence changes meaning with age. When you are younger, silence feels like absence. Later, it feels like space. Space to think, space to choose, space to breathe without performance, space to observe others reveal themselves without you prompting them. There is a subtle authority that comes from not needing to be seen. People sense it, even if they cannot explain it. It shows in how you move through rooms without rushing, in how you do not over-explain, in how you do not compete for attention, in how you can sit quietly without shrinking.
Being ignored also teaches discernment. You start noticing who reaches out only when they need something, who disappears when you stop initiating, who values your presence versus who valued your usefulness. This clarity can be painful, but it is freeing because it allows you to withdraw energy without resentment. You stop chasing conversations that drain you. You stop proving yourself to people who already decided not to see you. You stop offering wisdom to ears that are not ready, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. Respect after 50 is not demanded, it is conserved. It is shown through boundaries, through restraint, through choosing where to place your attention, because attention is power, and when you stop giving it away freely, something shifts. Many people fear becoming irrelevant, but relevance is not the same as impact. Some of the most impactful people in any family, community, or workplace are the ones who speak rarely but clearly, who are not always present but deeply felt when they are, who do not dominate conversations but anchor them. Being ignored trains you to speak from depth rather than urgency. You learn to wait until something truly needs to be said, and when you do speak, there is weight behind it, because your words are not competing, they are choosing their moment. There is also grief in this transition. It is okay to acknowledge it. Grief for the version of yourself who was seen more, who felt central, who felt in demand. That version served a purpose. It carried you through growth, responsibility, survival, but it does not need to be carried forever. Letting go of that identity creates space for something steadier, a sense of self that is not shaken by silence, a confidence that does not rise or fall based on attention, a peace that comes from knowing who you are without witnesses. This is why some people grow bitter with age, while others grow serene. The difference is not circumstance, it is where they place their worth. Those who cling to visibility feel discarded when it fades. Those who shift inward feel liberated. Being ignored teaches you to enjoy your own company in a deeper way, not as isolation, but as presence. You begin to trust your inner voice more. You no longer need constant feedback to know if you are on the right path. You listen to your instincts. You respect your energy. You choose simplicity without apology. There is power in being underestimated. When expectations drop, pressure dissolves. You are free to act without performance, free to say no without explanation, free to walk away without drama, free to observe rather than react. People who are overlooked often see more. They notice dynamics others miss. They understand motivations beneath words. They sense shifts before they are spoken. This awareness becomes a quiet advantage. Real power after 50 is the ability to remain composed when others are reactive, to remain grounded when others chase, to remain dignified when others seek validation. It is the ability to choose peace over being right, clarity over noise, depth over display. You stop measuring life by how much you are noticed and start measuring it by how little you are disturbed. The irony is that when you stop chasing attention, respect often returns in a different form, not flashy, not constant, but sincere. People begin to seek you out for perspective rather than entertainment, for steadiness rather than excitement, for truth rather than approval. And even if they do not, you no longer need it. Being ignored teaches you that your value does not decrease when eyes turn elsewhere. It simply becomes quieter, more internal, more resilient, less dependent on circumstance. There is a kind of freedom that only comes when you realize you do not need to be seen to be whole, when your sense of self remains intact whether you are praised or passed over, when you can walk away from rooms that no longer recognize your worth without carrying anger with you. At this stage of life, power is not about control, it is about choice, choosing where to invest energy, choosing when to speak, choosing when to remain silent, choosing dignity over noise. You begin to live with fewer explanations, fewer justifications, fewer emotional deaths. You owe no one constant access to your thoughts, your time, your presence. This is not withdrawal from life, it is refinement. Being ignored after 50 strips away illusions, and what remains is something solid, a self that does not need applause, a mind that does not need agreement, a heart that does not need constant reassurance. That is real power, quiet, steady, unshaken. And once you feel it, you no longer fear being overlooked because you finally understand that being unseen does not mean being diminished. It means being free.